Hello and welcome to Macro Mondays here on Landy's Crypto Corner. Today is December 9th, 2024. It's still Monday for me, but Bitcoin has opened its Tuesday candle and we are still in a compression phase for Bitcoin. So not much has changed on that front. And in fact, I kind of want to go over this again. I know I've gone over this before, but because we haven't seen this compression resolve and expansion to either the upside or downside just yet, I think that we're at an important inflection point for Bitcoin here this week into next week in terms of seeing what Bitcoin decides to do in terms of price direction and volatility expansion. So let's go ahead and define some criteria. We'll take a look at the weekly and we'll discuss kind of what the outlook is for the rest of this week and what we're looking for, at least in that regard. Now, Bitcoin has, started to kind of go into this compression. Now it's about 15 days into this compression. It really started right around when the prior all-time high was put in, just shy of $100,000 at 99,860 here. And, in fact, let me go ahead and just make sure this is snapping to the right candle high. Yeah, 99,860, really putting in that high right around this area on a swing basis sent the bands into compression. And then, of course, confirming that high on a closing basis about 14 days ago is when, the compression really became real. We got that mean reversion back to the basis band here. Again, this is a 20 simple moving average. And now we've been in the midst of compression ever since. So about 2 weeks of compression, maybe a little bit more. And we have yet to see this resolve. Now, the last time that we saw a nice compression like this, we did see, Bitcoin come into a trend reversal setup back here, and then drop down to higher lows, lower low, a lower high, lower low fashion, and then kind of went into that compression, started to resolve itself with higher highs and higher lows, tried for its first swipe at expansion up here, came back down in higher low fashion, and then kicked off the expansion in earnest here back in early November 6th, so shortly after the election, right? We saw the expansion up. During this nice expansion phase, we've now, seen much of what I talked about, and that is that, even in the expansion phase into compression, we can see volatile moves, and it's still very highly volatile on longer term timeframes. So daily volatility is still going to be high, and this is getting set up to resolve pretty soon, but we have to define some pretty specific criteria. Right now, I did these lines a little bit earlier. So the upper second is currently at right around 101,550. The lower second is now a little bit higher. It's almost $93,000. So we can update this little line here. So this is $93,000, we'll call it. And this is where on a closing basis, we will see expansion begin. So price volatility begin to expand. And that would confirm the expansion, but that doesn't mean that we're going to go into full-on expansion. We need more than just the bands, more than just volatility expansion to the upside or downside as our criteria. So it's pretty simple, actually. When we zoom in here and we look at Bitcoin on the daily, we can see that above the upper second standard deviation at 101,550 or so, maybe even you could be a little bit more aggressive if Bitcoin holds the basis and starts to move back up here as it has on a closing basis. We've seen the lower first spiked, but we haven't yet seen any closes back below the basis band. And I still wouldn't be concerned about that, and I'll explain why in just a moment. But even if we got closes above the upper second, we still need to get above, Friday, the 6th high here at 102,100. And then, of course, we need to see closes back above the high here where the upper third is coming in at around $104,000 even here on spot price. This would confirm expansion. So we would be above the highs, breaking overhead resistance on expansion. That's where the move really starts to get rolling. We also, we don't want to see closes then immediately back inside and start to get bearish reclaims of the range highs. But that's where we would want to see closes. Again, closes above the upper second that can also get daily closes above that $104,000 region. So we would start to get the etching of, Bitcoin price moving back to test the highs on closes above around 101,550, but we still need to see confirmed closes above that high at $104,000 for the true expansive move to start. And to the downside, it's pretty simple. Below the lower second, we still need to see $92,000 here dropped. And then there's still, you could tell by the cross here that's kind of going vertically and horizontally here on my chart that this is also a high side structure here from the first little pit stop that Bitcoin made during its expansive phase. So if that area was dropped, I need to see then this low drop. So we've got some zones to pay attention to. And I would advise those who are looking at this kind of a structure to kind of take the closing high up here, which is a closing all-time high. We'll make this yellow. We'll take the actual all-time high up here at $104,000 right there at that 1272 extension from the bear market. We will go ahead and draw a little rectangular box around this. And this is kind of our green zone, our area to watch to the upside here, right? And, there's important resistances right now because Bitcoin is trading below these areas in terms of horizontal support and resistance, in this case, overhead resistance, volatility resistance, and Fibonacci levels of interest as resistance overhead as well. So breaking through that on expansion, especially above the upper second and third standard deviation here on the daily, would look very good, of course, not just for making a new all-time high, but for actually kicking off an expansive move to the next big area of interest to the upside, which right now, where we find confluence would be somewhere around the 1414, somewhere at $128,000 to $130,000. I wouldn't necessarily be looking for a one shot, although that's not out of the question in high volatility environments. But we'll take a look at some bands on longer term timeframes to kind of gauge overhead levels of confluence with our band levels or volatility levels of interest. Now to the downside, we can mark basically this wick low, or you could just take the close open. I think the close open is basically $92,000 right here, this higher low structure on the daily. And we could just mark that off. Got front run a little bit on the big all-time high candle there that turned into a bearish candle. But between that area and around, the top side here, then what are we doing? We're looking for this next low to get tested. So between these two lows, I would call this kind of a zone of interest. This also falls on my 1.168. This is not a 1.618, but a 1.168. And this is an important level that I've back tested in just about every market you can think of. This would be, the bearish case would be getting below here. So we will turn this red. Now, could Bitcoin still save itself somewhere around the closing candle structure here at 87, 300 to 400, or this $85,000 wick low, which is also a Fibonacci level of interest from this structure that I can pull here just to kind of show you. Yes, it could absolutely save itself there. And that would constitute, by the way, somewhere around, a 19 to 20% correction, depending on which exchange you're using to measure the actual price drawdown here. So far, it's been pretty tame in a pretty volatile environment here. But let's go ahead and just show you that local fib again, just so you can see how it kind of lines up with stuff. If you were to look here, actually, maybe that's not one of them. 85 was, I thought. Maybe it was a volatility level of interest. I guess the next big area would be the 82.5 to 80,000 from a local fib pull area. But you can see that there is a 1414 right there at the close open right here from the local structure there. So if we were to really zoom in here, you could see it a little better. Right around this close open and the wicks here, we have a 1414 from that consolidation fib pull on an extension at around that 87.5. So dropping that, then, could it save itself at 85, this wick low? Sure. If not, and it closes below there, targeting somewhere around 82.5 to $80,000. This is $79,000 to $80,000 at this 1.168 extension from that more local fib pull. So this is just kind of how I'm evaluating price right now. Any moves down further to the lower second that fail to break down from this red box, this 88,700 to around $92,000. Not looking at this as bearish. Corrective, yes. Bearish, no. Bearish below there for a further deeper correction. Longer term time frame bearish, no, absolutely not. I'd still be looking up and to the right in the longer term timeframes for a while, at least until I saw some sort of a structural change on longer term timeframes like the weekly or monthly. There's no real reason to be looking at anything as overly bearish in this market just yet. So let's go ahead and get rid of this, and we'll look at some of the weekly here. Actually, let's finish up with some of the other stuff that I typically show you on the daily. So considering all that stuff, we do need to note that there is, three major drives of regular bearish divergence here. There is a drive between these 2 points up here as well, and even an extra drive from this guy here. So you got 2 drives here and then a drive here for this guy. But nothing that is telling me like, hey, this is now going to turn overtly bearish on the daily. This is a compression and a consolidation until proven otherwise. Corrective, yes. Full on reversal, not just yet, but do proceed with caution if we start to see, the $92,000 to $90,000 dropped over here. Now, when looking at momentum, you might recall that I've spoken about this a few times, and I've got a few different lines drawn here. I'm not really sure why, but either way, trend line regression, we've broken down from the first major trend line, headed down to the second. That's, not anything too crazy. 99,300 on the daily would turn things back onto the upside here. Now trading, about $1,500 below. Nothing too crazy. What I would be aware of is some of the major levels on RSI here. And that would be, the scale midline here at 93.5, and then the bearish control zone down here. If it starts to get into the bearish control zone, which is at $85,000, there's a coincidence and some confluence for us. Then I would be looking, honestly, for this correction to play out maybe a little bit deeper if it's on a wick basis, and try to form some bullish diversions on the other side, maybe from some of the structures over here in terms of continuation drives. But $85,000 is our confluence for the bearish control zone of RSI there. So good to look at that. Let's go ahead and take a look at, we've got, this setup here for BBWP. Let's go ahead and get rid of RSI and look at our volatility metrics here. And you can see that this is clearly not ready just yet. We did get some slight signs that it was going to try to get ready. But again, remember what I said. If we don't see closes above the upper second, we're not going to hit that true expansion. And then again, we need to see more aggressive closes above the upper third, turn this BBWP to the upside, and confirm that later after we see those particular moves, and or to the downside as well. In this case, nothing too crazy going on here, just a compression. And let's go ahead and look at the weekly here. So we're looking at upside expansion, still good to go. And could we get across back down? Yes, I'd be aware of cross back down where the moving average doesn't cross with it. Where would that occur? Another close kind of here or down on the weekly will likely see volatility cool down or go into a cool down phase. But then, as I've mentioned before, we're getting the bands now expanding past price. And when they expand past price, they initially act as overhead resistances. The upper second is now at $102,825. If Bitcoin were to trade back up, it's probably sitting at 103 to 103.5 or more. And of course, that would be around the high. So you would have confluence between the Fibonacci levels, the overhead resistance horizontally, plus volatility areas of interest and resistance overhead as well with the upper second. Any trades above there that close above there need to close above the $104,000 region to then have me targeting kind of a price replace band somewhere around the upper third at, or anywhere in between, realistically, even some shorter term time frame stuff, and above $100,000, like 106 to 108, 108 to 110, 110 to 112, and then our 112 to 115, 115 to 120. I would look for this to start heading up to 120 if Bitcoin trades back above, and especially closes above the upper second and the all-time high now. Any closes back below for this week, back below last week's low, would throw a technical swing high up here at $92,000. So be aware of that on the weekly. That would be a high. And we would see a lot of indicators call it a closing high. I would still need to see like 85 to this close open rate here at around $90,000. What is this? This is $90,682. So any closes below $90,000 for me would paint this as a technical closing high, even though you will see a lot of indicators for RSI throw a high here on any closes below 92. So 90 to 92 is kind of the zone to the downside again. The upper first is currently at 87,344. So again, we're getting some areas of interest that are having confluence with band levels. From the local fib poll here, this is that 414, this 1414. That's the extension off of this accumulation or reaccumulation structure, depending on if you're looking at it on a weekly or daily. So I don't want to see Bitcoin closing below the upper first. I'd like to see it remaining above it to preserve expansion. And realistically, I want to see Bitcoin closing back above the upper second. If it doesn't do it this week, then next week to get this continuation sooner rather than later. Otherwise, we might be in for a more corrective structure, in the 20 to 25% range, maybe even more, depending on how volatile things could get to the downside. But as it stands right now, none of that's confirmed. That's just all possibilities. And, the basis band is now right around the closing all-time high up here. Interesting. Very, very nice. 71,300. It's actually above it at 71,800, almost $72,000. That's a very good thing. We want to see this basis band above the prior structure, and it's starting to get there. Even nicer when it's above this actual wick high here. So any kind of retests into this area, obviously, it's a prior retest of a breakout. You want to see the SR flip from resistance into support on any retest. That would be a particularly deep pullback into like the 70 to 73 area. There's quite a few levels to get through before we would be looking for something like that, but can't rule it out. I want to start seeing this lower first above this last higher low on the weekly. Again, this is only two parts of a full trend on the weekly. We have, the trend break higher high here, and then we have the higher low. So this 66,550 to the higher low at 58,863. So higher high, higher low, higher high. What do we need to see for full trend? Another higher low. Preferably, I want to see a closing higher low, but I will accept, swing higher lows as well. And that would be full trend on the weekly. And then we just look to this high. Is it going to break, or is it going to just be a consolidation and push the high? But if it puts in a high, then we look for a higher low structure that could break this high, $104,000. Pretty simple. When looking at the weekly, again, looks fine right now. I will say that any closes below 99, I would say $100,000, because if Bitcoin does not push back up to the highs and get a close above about $100,000, that number is, for the pivot on the weekly, is going to be pretty aggressive in its adjustment to the high at 104. So need to see closes this week above $100,000 to keep momentum to the upside here, or else it is looking like a cross down on the weekly in the context of strengthening trend and DMI here. So ADX and DMI, which is, ADX is your strength of trend. Your DMI is not something I'm going to explain right now, but in the future, I might start getting into this. Probably we'll get into it first on the Learn TA with Landy series on Tuesdays with Peace Love. I think those are going to be 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern on a regular basis. I'll get with him tomorrow. We will have one tomorrow where I'm going over these concepts, tying things together just like I do here, and then answering any questions from the chat. So we've had some pretty good turnouts there. Just need some more questions from the audience if you have any. Yeah, so weekly looks fine. I want to see closes again for, to avoid the cross down, which is inevitable. It's in the critical zone, but oscillating around and getting a bullish reset within the critical zone is also going to be in the cards on any cross down if it does happen. But to preserve that upside momentum on the weekly, trade and close above 87 3 to 400 or 87.5 if you like, that 1414 from this price structure here, and try not to put in a high rate here if we're looking for immediate continuation. Obviously that won't happen if it puts in a high. We're looking for maybe a little bit of sideways and down, could last a little while. And of course a deeper correction, which I do think presents some pretty good opportunity. Of course, that's not financial advice. Go look at the charts yourself and evaluate it for yourself and manage your risk. That's going to do it for today, I think. I'm probably missing something that I normally would have covered. I'm a little discombobulated, got a sick kid at home, so I'm just trying to manage a few things at once. He's going to be fine. Kids get sick all the time. Thank you for your concerns, by the way, and all the love sent my way. But yeah, I should be bouncing around from various spaces throughout the week anyway. As a guest speaker, I just probably won't be able to host anything while he's home. And yeah, of course, I'll have more updates on the timeline regarding charts. And this coming Wednesday, I will have a check-in for you and see where we're at. You have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. With all that being said, much love, and Landy out. Take care.